if somebody actually wants change, wants to actually alter those issues, they're going to vote for me. We need to be building up and fortifying our democratic institutions. That's not what the Constitution was written for. It was written for the times when it's inconvenient.
Welcome to the Curators Podcast, a place for the Kennedy curious.
Good morning. This is Paul with the Curators and my co-host Jacqueline, and we are honored to have with us today Dr. Naomi Wolf. There might be one or two in our audience who do not know about Dr. Wolf, but for those people, allow me to read a little information about her here. Dr. Wolf is the founder and CEO of Legisector, a revolutionary online tool for empowering you and disintermediating lobbyists. As many of us know, Dr. Wolf is also one of the world's most influential feminists. She does not just comment on the world's most pervasive problems, but she aims to solve them as well. We like that. Dr. Wolf is a best-selling author, columnist, and professor. A graduate of Yale University, she received her doctorate from Oxford University. She is a co-founder and CEO of dailyclout.io, a successful civic tech company. As we all know, Dr. Wolf is a charismatic personality with a passion for activism. She has long challenged conventional narratives on gender, foreign policy, economics, and journalism. In her speeches and seminars, she exposes threats to liberty and to democracy, providing audiences with the tools to fight back against powerful institutional forces. Dr. Wolf has written 8 best-selling works of nonfiction, and I don't have a crystal ball, Dr. Wolf, but if my guess is right, that's about to become 9 in the not-too-distant future. And maybe we'll get to that book that you and your team have worked on so hard, and I think it has great value to our world at large. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you both. I'm excited to be talking to you and your audience.
Yes. I feel like I know you because I've seen so much of you and gotten to hear so much of you, and I know Jacqueline has as well. And, we were talking about how to open this discussion because there's so much fertile ground and so many important topics. And I wanted to bring up one of the books that you wrote in 2007, The End of America. And the reason I'd like to start there is because at that time, I felt as though you were a champion, more or less, of civil rights, a champion of the left, a champion for things that most of us in society hold dear,
Thank you.
And yet, when I read many of the sections of that book, I say to myself, I look at you today and I say to myself, this person has not changed very much at all. Perhaps you've learned more.
Thank you.
Perhaps you've learned more, but your cause is the same. It's to fight for those who can't fight for themselves, right? To fight for civil rights, to fight for right and for justice. Somehow the left, since 2007, and I think it's been more in the last 5 to 10 years, they seem to have taken a different view toward you. So much so that if somebody looks you up on Wikipedia, they'll see that you are an accomplished author and feminist and so on. But that word conspiracist gets applied to you, which I would love for you to clear up. I think that's a very unjust way to describe you. And so I'd like you to kind of walk us through, if you don't mind, a couple of minutes of how you got from 2007 to today and what it's been like for you.
Sure. Thank you. Well, indeed, it all did start in 2007, leading up to this moment, because the book I wrote then, The End of America, did foretell all the events we're seeing around us today. And it's not because I'm a genius. It's because that book undertook to look at history at times and places in the past when a democracy was intentionally undermined by a coup, a would-be tyranny, whether on the left or on the right. And it turns out that tyrants always do the same 10 things. There's a map to tyranny. It's 10 steps to tyranny that I identified, and we're at step 10 now. martial law, emergency law is step 10, and we've been under emergency law since the beginning of since June in New York of 2020. Most states are under emergency law. The federal government keeps extending emergency law. They keep rolling it out again for nonsense like the eclipse on April 8th, state by state. So it's just this constant declaration that we're under emergency law. And the reason people need to understand how serious that is that civil law doesn't apply under emergency law. Anything can be done to you. So I agree with you that I really haven't changed much except to learn some new things. I've always been Constitution first, and I thought that the liberal side of the aisle, into which I was born, and I was an advisor to Clinton's reelection campaign and to Vice President Gore's presidential campaign, I thought that they supported those values. But indeed, in the last 5 years, certainly since 2020, it has been revealed to me, certainly, that the left doesn't, the formal left, individuals probably do, but the formal left no longer supports values of Constitution, human rights, open discussion, free speech, which I have remained steadfast in championing. And they also don't really support following the data and following the evidence the way journalists are supposed to do. So as a result, your audience may know that in June of 2021, I did what I have done for 35 years, which is I reported that women were reporting menstrual symptoms upon receiving these mRNA injections. And those are women eyewitness reports of their own bodies, right? There's that's primary documentation according to traditional journalism. It's not definitive, it's anecdotal, but if a lot of women are saying this thing has happened to me since I received this injection, that's a sign that a good journalist will follow up on. And it's nothing new for me, right? I've written about women's health and sexual and reproductive health for 35 years and was a darling on the left as a result. But this got me deplatformed from Twitter and every social media platform. And as you mentioned, my bio changed overnight around the world, from all of these honors to conspiracy theorist is the first insult of my bio. And I didn't understand AI at that time. So I didn't know that AI allows language to be changed around the world at the same time. And since then I've been kind of cast out of my perch as a member of as a media darling on the left and as a member of the liberal elite. And in a way that's been the greatest blessing. And it's the subject of my most recent book, which is called Facing Beast, because having been exiled from the left, the only people who talk to me now are conservatives and libertarians and people of faith. And as a result, I have learned a great deal. And one thing I learned is that the stereotypes we are fed on the left about conservatives and libertarians and people of faith are mostly wrong. But I also learned that a lot of things I believed on the left are just not true. So a key chapter in my latest book is Dear Conservatives, I Apologize. I believed a lot of nonsense that I had to correct for. So I guess that's my story. And thank you for noticing that my core values really haven't changed at all. The world around me has changed.
And so it seems, thank you for sharing that. It seems as though much of you mentioned before that tyranny can come from either the right or the left. And it seems to me that there was a movement perhaps on the right years ago where many on the left felt as though that movement toward tyranny was underway, and they felt threatened by it. And perhaps they then, as a reaction to that, embraced many of the concepts that have led to their own form of tyranny. And I see the left as almost outflanking the right to tyrannical rule here today.
Yeah.
And perhaps one of the we can talk about medical tyranny, which I know you're very familiar with. And if you'll allow me to just show this screen here, because I have this one particular graphic that I like to share, and it I'll get to it in a moment. But Section 230, Dr. Wolf, you're familiar with that. The government is using the threat of Section 230 to harm social media companies, and I'm a fan of holding social media companies responsible for the content that is distributed on their platforms. That's my personal view. But when the government comes in and starts to mandate and use social media to accomplish its own narrative and its own agenda, well, that's a different story. That's overreach. That's where we start entering the realm of tyranny. Have you any thoughts or experience about that?
Well, certainly, because it turns out that the people who were behind my deplatforming were the White House. Two lawsuits by attorneys general in Louisiana and Missouri revealed that it was the Biden administration putting pressure, looping in law enforcement and the U.S. Bureau of the Census, who knows, where I live. They put pressure on Twitter and Facebook to uh, issue a BOLO, a be on the lookout alert for my tweet and tweets like mine. And they lifted out my accurate tweet that, would have kept many women from being very badly injured reproductively, now almost 3 years later. So that's scary and illegal and unconstitutional. It's the subject, of a Supreme Court decision in June. I don't agree with you. I don't think social media platforms should be responsible for their the content that they allow people to express. I mean, there are very clear, limited restrictions on freedom of speech in our Constitution. Threats of violence, for instance, specific threats of violence are not allowed. And yes, a private company has the right to censor, but I personally think, and speaking as a publisher as well, a digital publisher of our site, Daily Clout, if someone posts a comment or a letter or even a blog that may turn out to cause someone to riot, even though they didn't tell them to riot, or may turn out to be untrue or whatever. You can't have free speech if it's called a chilling effect. You can't have free speech if publishers are constantly worrying about, is this, is someone going to be defamed? Is someone going to be offended? Is this hate speech? I mean, that's the beauty of the United States. I was just in Europe. Certainly this is true in Canada now, Scotland, Ireland. They're passing these draconian hate speech laws where if you say something on Twitter that someone could construe as hate speech, you're facing, fines and jail time. It's deranged. So I personally think social media platforms should be regulated the way AT&T is regulated, as a utility. And, people are responsible for whatever they say. And if someone wants to sue someone for what they said being defamatory, that's a civil action between those individuals, right? Not against Twitter or Facebook or Daily Clout for that matter. So that's my view.
Really do.
And I have to agree with you as well. So,
Yeah.
and I will actually say that I've had, if things were the way they are today, in 2010, I have my own personal experience with Facebook and social media. I was during the time in 2010, my son at 14 was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which is a life-threatening disease. And then 2 months later, our daughter was diagnosed with this.
So
And
sorry.
it was, and especially that they were 14 and 10, 11 years old. It was right out the gate. I had a lot to learn. And the place I had to learn, aside from being across the table or the exam table with the doctors and even the hospitals, because we lived there for years, was the internet. And I had to learn how to use it as a tool, because that's what it is. It's a tool. And social media, the communication with other people, you have to look at it as a tool. Not everything you're going to hear is correct. Not everything you're going to hear is right. But the more information that you pull in, you can put it together and come up with solutions, come up with finding what is more towards what is right to solve your problem. And I have to say, with all the toxicity that you could say that is in social media, Facebook literally saved my son's life.
Thank God.
On Facebook groups, I mean, literally, I was speaking out, telling them that the doctors told me that there was no more hope to start to get ready to say goodbye to him.
Oh God.
He had lost his ability to eat completely. He was tube fed, IV fed. He had pancreatitis from CF. It was a nightmare. And then a grandmother in a group had reached out to me in a message, hearing me kind of just venting, more than venting, and she said, "I think I might have an answer for you."
Oh my gosh. What was it?
It was a surgery that I had looked into, and the doctors, when I brought this to the other hospital that was pretty much taking care of me, they said, no, it's too risky. But I kept saying in my head, how are you saying it's too risky? You're telling me that he's going to die anyway.
God.
Let's take a chance, right? So she came in and she said, this is a child diagnosed at the same age. I know his mother, and she gave me all the information. Within 24 hours, I was on the phone with this woman, and within 2 days, we flew out from New Jersey out to University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and 2 months later, my son's life was saved.
Thank God.
Now think about it today. If the restrictions that they put on, he would not have survived. He would
That's right.
not. And with when 2020 came along, we were the most vulnerable. We were the ones they kept warning everybody about. You need to behave because you're going to hurt,
Right.
mom or this woman's 2 kids.
Right.
And it was, but they did nothing for us. They
Right.
just used us.
They used you. Yeah.
Exactly. And my son even had said that to me. He said they used us. And the one big thing that I'll say is that when I saw you speaking so many times, I felt like you were a voice for my children, for myself, and for my husband, for our family, and for the people in our category of whatever, or situation that you want to say. Because you were one of the many of the few, but you were one of the loudest voices that was outspoken, and you were speaking about quality of life. Because once they were diagnosed, the doctors kept saying, don't put them in a box, don't put them in a bubble. You need to let them live. Be careful, but at the same time, don't restrict their lives, especially since it would be shorter than your average person's life. Don't restrict them, let them live. But then 2020 came along, including our doctors that had told us all of this since they got diagnosed. Everything went out the window. No, quality of life doesn't matter anymore. And absolutely not. It's all about quantity, not quality. But then they ended up, it all dissolved because it doesn't work.
What a story. I hope you write about that someday. We'll publish your essay or your interview just about that. I mean, what a journey. Thank God you got information you needed for your kids. I would just kind of extend from my experience what you're saying. And again, respectfully, Paul, we're not beating up on you. But I think what Jacqueline has shared is very, very critical. Many people watching will have their own stories, because I thought that the revelations that my 3,250 doctors and scientists who are, have worked under Amy Kelly, my COO, reading through the Pfizer documents and creating these 97 reports showing the damage that was done by this mRNA injection, I thought that was the worst thing I would see in the annals of pharma. But then it turns out I started to do, and this is related to what you're saying, Jacqueline, I started to do these very banal, I thought very kind of vanilla podcasts about herbal and natural remedies, because I thought this is so horrible to see how badly people have been killed and injured, how badly they've been injured and that they've been killed. Let me see if there's anything that is non-pharmaceutical that can help, the circulatory problems, the neurological problems, and, certainly your kids, with their existing problems, they need support for their overall health, right? And so many of us, do, whatever the issue is. So then YouTube and Twitter and various platforms started restricting my peer-reviewed studies about sarsaparilla or guava leaf tea or things that have been things that have been in use for centuries, or
And
turmeric.
I want to chime in
Yeah.
here because I am every bit as much on your side on this issue as you can imagine. And
I'm
so
sure.
whatever kind of confusion came up earlier, I think I threw a word or two in there that may not have sat well, but I totally want this because I'm going to present this screen here and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is where I think, this is what really got me, Dr. Wolf, is when I saw this
Oh my
chart,
God.
which comes from The Economist, and the Kaiser Foundation actually was part of this study as well, and it shows how the average lifespan of an American without an undergraduate degree has plummeted. This is beyond the age of 25, so
Whoa.
your average lifespan has declined significantly just in the last 5 years, and you can
Good God.
see that this is down some for those of us with college degrees, but without college degrees,
Am I
it's
reading that
significantly
correctly?
worse.
This is saying the average lifespan now for those without an undergraduate degree in the US is under 50, like 49 years old?
Plus 25, so beginning at age 25, and then
So
another
75.
49 years.
So
Yeah.
people have really lost like a decade in average
It,
lifespan.
it looks to me like they've lost about 4 years going
Hmm.
from.
I see. Wow. That's so bad. Well, I mean, I know why that's happening. Other people can be in denial if they want, but I know what caused that, and it's not COVID.
No, not at all. And I actually did not read it, but I listened to you speak about the survival of the weirdest essay, and wow, like that really, really got me because it's true. It's that we're the weird, the ones that question the weirdest, the ones that are questioning the things around you. It's like it puts you back into the time when people say, oh, the earth would, people thought the earth was flat, and then there were people that questioned that
Mhm.
for multiple reasons. Those questions still continue. you know
Mhm.
it is questioning if the world is flat or not, and
Metaphorically.
metaphorically,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. And it, we're watching all these strange things. It doesn't mean that everything that you bring up, that you question, is the answer or the truth, or whatever they want to call conspiracy or things like
Right.
that. But what's wrong with asking these questions? How do you get to a
Right.
solution without asking questions? and
Right.
and I
What's
mean,
wrong with
frankly,
challenging your own beliefs?
Right.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
and
No,
and
that's what
it
we were
seems
taught, right?
right.
When we were
It
kids. Yeah.
has journalism become largely a just agents for state propaganda?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I should use what you both just said to respond to your introductory question, which I didn't really answer, about the question, what about this word conspiracy and conspiracy theorist? Like misinformation, I feel like it is someone I really respect, who's Professor Mark Crispin Miller, who's an educator at NYU. Makes the case that that phrase, conspiracy theorist, was really coined by the intelligence community to discourage people initially from asking questions about JFK's assassination. And then it can be applied usefully to any questions about any state propaganda at all. And so to me, I'm probably the only journalist in America who has also been a reporter and also been an advisor to a presidential campaign and to a vice president. So I bring that up because the people who are throwing around the phrase conspiracy theory don't know how decisions are made in those rooms. And in those rooms, I can tell you from personal experience, the most important decisions are not going to be, announced to a press spokesperson. They're not going to be in a press release. They're probably going to be made without any documentation at all to avoid a paper trail. to allow for what's called deniability. And it is literally powerful people making an agreement to determine the outcome of history or of massive institutions like the economy or, the legislature. So that's a conspiracy, like literally that is what that word means. People conspiring together without disclosure for an outcome. So I don't even bother like protesting when I'm called a conspiracy theorist anymore, because I just think people who throw that term around literally don't know how the world works and are buying into, the people who broke the Watergate story, real journalists, that hypothesis that, once they saw some evidence, any journalistic hypothesis could be called a conspiracy theory, right? But it used to be called journalism. It used to be called investigative journalism back in the day. So that word has really kind of
or minority
demonized
opinion,
investigative journalism. Sorry?
Or minority opinion, even.
Exactly. So I'm with you. Question everything. And what Jacqueline was referring to, for those who may not follow my Substack, is I did write an essay, my most recent, called Survival of the Weirdest, in which I made the case, I'm often criticized for asking all kinds of questions, including, questions that could be seen as outlandish, or like I looked up in the sky in 2017 and the sky was behaving differently than it used to behave. And then I researched geoengineering and I found out that that's a real thing. But, the bots and trolls came out when I started to look into this, because you're not supposed to know that, right? And so many subjects, people can be mocked a lot. I mean, that's another function of social media, is the deployment of bots and trolls for public mockery. And as a journalist, it never really bothered me. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but you're supposed to ask questions. And if there's a there, you'll find it soon enough. And if it's not, you go on to other things and say, well, I was wrong about that, whatever. But that my essay makes the case that we're in such a weird time with things that we understand and things that we do not understand happening all around us, including, in my view, metaphysical things, that the people who keep their minds open and are willing to ask weird questions are the ones who are most likely to survive, literally.
Absolutely. And I know you have a limited amount of time with us today, and I want to be respectful of your time. We've been scrolling some of your efforts on the bottom of the screen, Dr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Would you like to just close out with how we can best follow you and find you?
Yes, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Well, the thing I want to share with everyone that I'm most excited about today is our new platform called legisector.com. And you have to type it in because Google's suppressing it. It's such a revolutionary tool. But you can literally see any state or federal bill. You can share it through social media, and you can sign up for a dedicated custom portal for the industry you're in. For the, if you're buying a house, you can look into mortgages. If you're investing in gold, you can look into the economy, like literally anything you're doing. If you're an advocacy group, you can follow family-oriented legislation. It's an absolutely unbelievable, empowering tool you are your own lobbyist, basically. And there it is. And then you can come to dailyclout.io, which is our news site, and please support us. Independent journalism. We only survive, as you guys know, through the support of our audiences. And lastly, my Substack is called Outspoken. And you can listen to me on Substack and read me there as well. And the book is called Facing the Beast. So those are all the things we're doing right now that I want to share with your audience.
That's an amazing. You are a tireless warrior. We are so grateful.
No, I'm a tired warrior, but thank you.
You're both, and we all know that this medical tyranny, that they're in the business of sickness, not in the business of wellness.
Totally.
And the public needs to know. This is about informing the public about things that are existential threats to us, to our own citizens here in this country.
Right.
That's an important point, that we seem to get lost in all the tribalism, but
totally. And they're not going to stop, right? They're not going to stop, and we can't trust the FDA. So just because COVID is over and the mRNA vaccines hopefully are in the rearview mirror, the takeaway is that the FDA is broken, pharma is broken. And so I did want to say to Jacqueline before we sign off, do take a look at our Liberty Lifestyle videos where we're looking at alternative remedies, and I'll look into herbal treatments for the symptoms of cystic fibrosis,
Oh,
which
thank
I'm,
you so much. Thank
of
you.
course.
That
Thank you.
means the
Very kind
world.
of you. Thank you.
And good job, Mama Bear, right? Looking after your kids.
Yeah.
Great job.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys, I have to sign off, but thank you so much for everything.
Thank
Great
you.
to talk to you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
All the
Bye-bye.
best.
Bye-bye.
You
now.
too.
Yeah.
That was
And
great.
and we spend $4.3 trillion a year in this country on healthcare, Jacqueline. Most of that is chasing chronic disease.
Yes.
We spend twice as much per capita as any other country in the world.
I,
We have the worst health outcomes of any nation. So there's no question that sickness is a profitable model for them,
yeah.
right?
And I was actually thinking this morning even about the rate of chronic illness and the rate of the syndromes and autoimmune issues and things like that, because they're not they're a collection of symptoms. They're a collection of diseases that people have, and they have comorbidities and they have all the different things. So it's not like a straightforward thing. um, so when people are having, say, a side effect from something, so many times the pharmaceutical companies or the doctors can just blame the side effect on the disease itself or the condition itself. And that's something that I have experienced myself. So it's like when we would bring up a symptom or new one or something that's been, ongoing, that want to resolve for myself, my own health, or for my kids, it's dismissed easily. And I've noticed this more and more and more since the kids were diagnosed in 2010, because that's when healthcare and I really got a crash course in healthcare in general, and had to learn, how to navigate the system. And I'm still learning, and it's becoming more authoritarian, and which I felt that from the very beginning. And I think that originally, even at some point, um, there is like a level of authority from the doctor, because you are going to them for an answer. You are looking to them for somebody, of authority in a good way. But it should be also because they know something that you don't know. That's why you're going to them, or you're assuming that they know something that you don't know, to fix to help fix you, or fix your problem. They're the experts, and they're the ones with the large education. They're the ones with the large experience. They're the ones with the people that are dealing with the same issues that are all the time. And then there's egos that are involved also. So
You
you
think?
have people who are in these positions, and ego is there for a reason. It's there to make us better people. It's made to make us stronger, to make us more curious, to make us smarter, to seek more information. But when you let it get out of control and you let ego rule things, that tool of ego that is inside us, that exists, it defeats us. So like I'm saying, I really noticed over the past 10, 14 years, since I've been thrown into the fire in this medical realm. Um, it, it's uh it, it has become more authoritarian. They've pushed back on things. When you report a symptom, as I started to bring before, you are dismissed easily, and it's like, oh, well, that's just CF, or that's just
Right.
RA,
Right.
or that is just this. And you say, well, could it possibly be the medication that we just started? Nah, and so many times the first answer is not, let's see, let's track those symptoms, let's track those. Maybe we could cut back, maybe we, pull back your dosage and see if there's a change. that doesn't seem to be the original instinct for them to say, which that to me would be logical.
It goes against the business model, right? And
Right.
the their ego that you talk about, that can drive innovation. It can drive advancements of all kinds medically, but it must be tempered and balanced by a sense of humility, which I think the medical profession probably had at one time when we were young, but having been captured by these profiteers, it just seems to me that they walk around like, how much do we really know about the human body, Jacqueline? You
Very,
know,
very little. I mean,
very little. We
and
know infinitely more than we used to,
right,
but we still may know only 2 or 3% of all there is to know about the human body, our place in the world, our place in the universe, the all of the intricacies of the trillions of cells in our bodies. I mean, there's so much, but the profession seems to walk around like they know not 2%, but 92%, and they start getting this sense of hubris that then feeds their ego and doesn't give them that sense of balance that they need to to practice the Hippocratic oath,
right.
right?
And what's so sad is that we need them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm pleased to see a revolution in the naturopathic and the more natural ways of doing things. Um, but it's very interesting to see the resistance and the pushback from the others, from the medical field and from the scientific field of that, when at one point they appreciated it so much that they had created aspirin. Aspirin is from salicylic acid. Salicylic acid is pretty much in every single like leaf and flower and plant out there. And that's actually what it was made from. They've lost their way,
You
you
know,
know, they really
uh,
have lost their way. And
and
it's sad.
here's the thing too, and this is the dirty little secret that nobody really wants to talk about, is since healthcare is 20% of our GDP, right?
Yeah.
And healthcare is only one aspect of what I'm talking about, the broader picture, but a lot of what we call GDP which is how we measure our economy, in many ways how our stock market gets valued, how wealth is created in this country, or at least the perception of wealth is created in this country. If we suddenly started treating patients the way they deserve and we were in the business of wellness, imagine the hit that GDP would take, at least initially,
Mhm.
from this, if we had to unravel all of this corporate capture of these agencies, and we started treating people based upon herbal remedies or natural remedies that bypass this big, register ringing of these giant pharmaceutical companies. And that's just one aspect of it, right?
Right.
So I think the government is probably looking at this like, we have to keep our GDP up, even if it means that we're throwing the health of our citizens under a bus to a degree, right? That chart I showed earlier demonstrates that.
Yeah.
So, these agencies should be protecting us, the USDA, the EPA, the NIH, the CDC, the HHS. And I'm not saying they're not at all doing that, but certainly they seem to be more interested in protecting the corporations and their profit motives than they are in protecting the people from those profit motives. That's the strong sense that I get, and there's
Yeah.
mounting evidence of that, Jacqueline.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of what Dr. Naomi Wolf was speaking about, being in those rooms, like,
Right.
those decision rooms, and that the people are conspiring to come up with solutions that, and it's not a conspiracy of that it's fake, it's that they are making decisions for the rest of us that maybe we don't see, specifically on paper, because they're collaborating together to keep a certain level of something going on, be it financially or a power struggle or
Mhm.
whatever it is, because they're looking at things at a different view than we are looking at things, which is our everyday life. And our everyday life is the thing, our quality of life, as I keep using that term, because that is, there's nothing more important than quality of life. Nothing,
Nothing.
absolutely nothing. But those big decisions that the powers that be are don't take those things into account.
I wrote a piece not too long ago on how to run a successful conspiracy. And the number one element of that is to make sure that you accuse the person who's challenging your conspiracy as being the conspiracist.
It
So
shuts them
you,
down.
you,
It shuts conversation down.
right, you make sure you paint that person who will expose you, the whistleblower or whoever that is, the truth teller.
Hmm.
You turn them into the conspiracist and you unleash your minions upon them. One of my heroes is Father Richard Rohr, who has a Center for Action and Contemplation in New Mexico. And he says, he makes the point that one of the greatest enemies that mankind has is certitude. The more certain I am of something, the more dangerous I become, you know.
Hmm.
And I think that's playing out a lot in our society today. And we can do better. We need to do better, you know.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely. Do you think that all these tyrannical type of imposures that that are starting, that have been increasingly built into our system, do you think that partly, in many different ways, do you think that partly it is, some people are looking at it where they're kind of testing for the weak spots in humanity and society, the soft spots, the weak spots, like, they definitely tested us in during the pandemic, that's for sure. um, they definitely found openings and doorways of, like, oh, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could control them this way, that kind of thing. I know that might sound conspiratorial in a big sense, but I'm just talking about in general mechanism type of thing of human beings, that where you could kind of transfer that into so many different things in general.
and the rational approach there to me, Jacqueline, is to think of these things as possibilities because absent proof of that being the case, it's hard to say to present it as fact, as truth, but we could certainly say that it makes a lot of sense that history has shown that these types of activities have taken place. We you can read about Jekyll Island, for example, in our own history, and some of the decisions that were being made by, a small number of men with cigars in smoke-filled rooms that affected the country as a whole for many years to come, right? And so are there those individuals who get together like that today? Some people might point to the WEF and say, they're kind of that group that makes
Right,
those
the little
decisions
cabal
today.
that's in there, right?
Yeah, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Which I don't think is a phrase that's going over too well in much of the world. Certainly not in the Labasco household.
Not here either, not
Yeah.
here at all.
Okay.
um
Okay. So we're going to wrap it up. Do you have any concluding thoughts?
um I mean, I do have to say that essay that Dr. Naomi Wolf had recently put out, "The Survival of the Weirdest." I think it is quite important to read, because it it is a matter of, like, if you shut yourself off and you put your head in the sand and you don't look up at the sky and you don't see, what is going on. Um, if the sky does fall, you're not going to see it falling. So I'm not saying it's falling, but you won't see it falling if you stick your head in the sand. So ask those questions, and I think that as in general, we have to be a bit braver. That was something even just for my own kids, like you know, working with the docs. Respectful, but push back in a respectful way, but you need a little bravery to do that.
Hmm.
And I think we as humans have to find our bravery and not be so afraid and just keep our head in the sand and just, hear no evil, hear see no evil. That seems what it sounds so basic, but that's what I think that is driving most of this. How about you?
Oh, we'll end it there. We'll end it there. That's great. You you have a wonderful day, and
You
I
too.
will end it, and God bless.
Okay. Thank you.